Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the CCM Trigger 9 Pro stick review. And I have the previous ones here, the 8 and the 7, to do the comparison review on. I have the triggers for generations now. I brought all of them out to show these on here, but CCM just keeps pumping out sticks, and this is another case. It feels like it was yesterday when I finished the Trigger 8 Pro review, and now we have the 9 Pro, and now they're doing a special edition low kick as well that isn't exactly a trigger. So this is me reiterating a lot of things on here. I'm not going to go through the whole details of this stick in terms of tech on it, and we'll go over some things. It's basically the same compared to the 8 for the actual shaft shape and stuff like that. Before we begin all of that, I want to hear what your thoughts on this are. Are all of these stick releases too much? This is the Trigger 9 Pro. I thought the Trigger 6 Pro was fantastic and a really solid upgrade over the 5. And then the 7 was a slight improvement over the 6. And then the 8. There's just so many. So what are your thoughts on how fast sticks should release? Should this be a 2-year cycle like Warrior, Bower, and True do? Or should this be a yearly release, which really feels like it's like 8 months for what CCM does? Let me know in the comments below. I know tons of people always want the newest and greatest things, but is that something that's actually necessary, or do you think the extra wait time allows things to cook a little bit more and is more worthwhile as a consumer? So to start things off, we're going to talk about the most important thing on here, which is the graphics. And this really feels like CCM is leaning away from the purple, which I'll show in a second. But something interesting down here, you can see they have their Helicoid Industries piece on here, and they've had that for their blades for a few other lines. It's coming to the trigger on this one. Now, something that I think is kind of interesting is they have this. It almost looks like the forged carbon that you can see on Callaway golf stuff and Lamborghinis. You can see the design right here, and you can see it up here as well, and it's almost like a splatter type design. Now down here, it is covering up the joint of the stick itself, so you can't actually see where the blade and the shaft meet up, and there's carbon wrapping it, and it's not the cleanest thing. That right here is covering that. You can see some remnants of it right here with these 2 squiggles, which is that kind of carbon on there. And again, that black part is just showing that off. When you put your hand over here, you can feel this just being slightly different. You can feel it kind of going inwards on there, but the whole finish of it is pretty good and much better than what True does. The bottom has a monochrome look, as you can see, just like the 8 on here. And going down here, you can see these sticks kind of look identical for parts of them. But then when you get up, you can see that paint look splatter, almost forged look right on there, but nothing crazy on the bottom. When we look at the side, you can see how little purple is on this stick now. This used to be a green stick. It then became purple, and now it's kind of rainbow. So you can see the difference in the CCM logo. I do like that rainbow kind of chrome look on the logo and on the stick. It looks really great under light, and I love how it changes colors. But the purple was very unique and also looked absolutely fantastic, and it's kind of going away. You can see it used to be the main color, now it's just accents, and you get that very awesome rainbow effect on there that most sticks are basically going to now. And you can see like the chrome finish on there. I think it's called rainbow chrome, is why I keep saying chrome, but it looks fantastic. It's totally different than what the old purple line was, and I liked Trigger going to purple, and then now they're kind of getting rid of it, which I think is a bit of a negative because it was unique and it doesn't differentiate them that much. You can see at the top as well just how much purple is lost. When you look at these side by side, the graphics, while they are different, they're almost like pretty similar in terms of where the actual color and everything is. Same with the top too. Well, you do have like this kind of piece here. You look, it's really similar to what both of them were. So it's kind of annoying. They're pretty similar to each other. I did like the ghosting of the CCM there and of the rib core here. That is gone on it, and it's all graphics. The only ghosting really of the logo is right here, which is fine and looks good, but it's kind of gone on the rest of them. When we get onto the inside, you can really see the lack of purple on here, and you can see a lot more of that almost fake forged look. And I think they did this on the tacks too, where it's almost like a camouflage look, but it's like a kind of paint splatter look on it. So not sure why they're going that route, but they are, and you can really see the differences between the purple and what this is now. It's also kind of funny how they're switching the tech on here. You can see the inside nano, outside STP. It obviously swapped on the other side. I wonder if that's to kind of combat fakes, so hopefully the fakes don't recognize that and kind of do the same thing, because you are seeing more and more fakes out there. And while color and graphics aren't actually that important, the stick overall looks great, and I like that rainbow effect. I'm just sad they kind of killed off the purple look. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff from them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an ANSI level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off and it helps support the channel. Now to actual important things. The helicoid is that new blade tech that I talked about previously on the jet speed. It works really well in terms of puck feel on the jet speed. The trigger already had a more dampened blade feeling to begin with, so I'll talk about that in another part of the video. The rest of the tech on this is pretty similar. You have that taper that's been on triggers for a while. They're asymmetrical taper. It's no longer branded down here, interestingly enough, which used to be on there, but it's gone. But you can see how that taper is on the inside, and the outside, the stick bows outwards. And it is the same thing going up here, where this is a more rounded edge, and on the inside is more concave. So you have a convex and concave shape on here. It's pretty standard on trigger sticks for a while now. And looking at three sticks, when you are feeling them with your hands, they do, to me, feel the exact same. So you have that convex out here, so it's a bit more rounded with rounded corners on both sides, really. And then it bows outwards a bit where the actual taper is down here and gets wider and more aggressive in terms of this taper in here and this kind of groove in there. And they honestly feel exact same in terms of feel for me when I'm feeling these next to each other. And that's kind of my thing with CCM, where yes, you don't really have to change the shaft shape and all that over year, but at the same time, what is really being different when you release sticks this soon close to each other, and that's going to be a recurrent theme. For the grip tests on here, this is going to be done with our single layer Pro Stock Bower palm, so it's consistent with everything. When you grab the 7, it is okay grippy, but you can't really feel the texture at all on here. And that is something I talked about previously. You can see it in the actual like light a little bit, but the texture on here, you couldn't really feel at all. And CCM has made solid improvements on that with the 8, where you could feel the texture, and they've been doing that with the jet speed as well. This texture though, on this one, well, you can definitely see it through there. You couldn't really feel it all that much. You could feel it with your fingertips, couldn't really feel it with your palm all that much. It was there, but it was very minimal, and grip was okay. It's CCM's grip, so it's nowhere near as good as Bower and Nail Warrior and that Pro Stock Hockey stick, but it was okay, and it still kind of chipped like you saw everything. And there's no difference in terms of chipping on this stick, which I will show. But when you actually feel it like this, the grip on it is still not super grippy. So you don't have a ton of tack there, which to me is totally fine. It's like CCM's, you're used to it. But I still think Bower and other companies are doing that a bit better. But the actual graphics themselves and the actual textured pieces itself is much more 3D and actually more defined. You can see, hopefully through the light a lot, you can see it a lot better in person. And it doesn't really follow the same lines as what the previous one did. So the 8 really followed the graphics with the texture. So hopefully you can kind of see this, where the graphics here is where the texture is going. So it was kind of a swooping overall pattern, and it had kind of a normal pattern down here, but it wasn't super defined, and it felt like it was almost flattened out when they did the spray, or they did so much spray that it just kind of flattened it out. And it didn't feel all that great, but it did have an interesting overlay and kind of shape that it took to it. Really opposite of what CCM's been doing in terms of jet speed, where they put the grips on specific parts that your hands feel. This was kind of just felt like it was all over the place. And this is a solid upgrade. So you can see the grip actually going on the inside like this, and you can see how it is angled, and then it kind of makes that shape. And it does go on the top as well. So this kind of curls over all the way as a one-piece grip. It does get intercepted by this purple little graphic on there, so you don't see it there, but it does come wrap all the way over here, and you can see it on here. And when you are actually using this, you can feel it so much better. For the actual fingers right here, you can feel that grip all the way through here, and you can feel that texture, which is really nice. And when you put your whole hand on it, you can also feel it on the palm a little bit as well. Your thumb on the top can definitely feel it as well. So this is a huge improvement over what they've had previously on triggers in terms of getting that grip back. So I'm really happy to see that they actually do have grip on here. They're not using it all over the stick and just really the spot where you're really going to hold the stick and actually shoot with the stick. And I love that it is there and is a big big improvement over their previous ones. For durability on this is always going to be a caveat of I use a ton of sticks and I'm not playing and using these like a player who is playing 5 times a week just with one stick is going to use. I generally don't have a ton of durability concerns on sticks from my usage, so I have to go by what I hear from stores and from some people I talk to in the industry. I haven't heard anything crazy for these, but that's been the same over and over again. I also haven't heard anything specifically crazy for the helicoid either, and it's the same thing over and over again. CCM has had issues previously, like the FT6 Pro I've heard people had issues with. The triggers, from my understanding, people never specifically had really bad issues with the triggers to begin with. So continuing on with this, again, nothing crazy I'm hearing about, and the people who I know who do play in minor hockey and are using trigger 9s or using trigger 8s, there was nothing awful with them and they were just pretty standard for CCM. But obviously, because it's not my individual usage, I can't say anything crazy in regards to that. So for the damage on the paint and kind of the grip and everything on itself, this is so standard CCM. You can see the paint chips on it will be more than basically any other brand I've used, and it's the same thing over and over again. It's just expected at this point. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's always there and you can see it, and it just happens to be like worse than most other companies that I've used, and it doesn't really bother me. It's just a thing, and it's just CCM. I don't know if their top layer is slightly thinner than other companies, but it does just seem like it chips more on the paint and graphics than other companies do. So for the blade feel, first thing on here is the texture of the blade, which is this. You can hopefully hear that textured finish, which is on basically all sticks now. It's just the way carbon fiber can be pressed together, and it just adds a texture to it. For puck feel between the 8 and the 9, this is the 8. And I always say the best way to figure out puck feel is making hard passes where you don't have someone to pass back to. You can make hard passes like this, and it gives you a good idea on how the blade will feel, and you can also feel it stick handling too, but that generally gives you a better idea because it's more force behind it. So when you get to the 9 Pro, the puck feel on this is just like what happened on the FT7 Pro, and that is a more dampened blade with that helicoid Industries carbon in here. This thing feels more dampened than what the 8 did, but the toe is still pingier and stiffer on the blade. Now, here's the interesting thing. The difference between these two is honestly very significant, and I love the blade feel of the 9 Pro. That is so much more dampened in feeling to it compared to the 8 Pro, and the 8 was already dampened compared to old CCM blades. So this is an awesome improvement. This is great for puck feel. It's great for stick handling. It's great for like everything. The only thing people might kind of confuse, and I see this a lot, is because it's more dampened, they might think the pop on the 8 Pro is better just because it kind of gives that feedback in a more pingy and instant and more vibration way. So it feels like more force is coming off the stick. It's really not. It's just a thing that people kind of feel when they shoot it. But this stick feels fantastic. And on the toe, it is a bit pingier than what it is on the rest of the stick. So you go down here, and that is definitely more dampened. But when you go to the 8 and you have it, it just feels like a totally different line of stick, and it's a huge upgrade in my opinion for puck feel. So CCM honestly has a real winner here in terms of puck feel with this new carbon. And when you compare the new blade on the FT7 Pro and the Trigger 9 Pro, both of them feel dampened. It's a give or take. I use this one, I'm like, oh yeah, that's more dampened than this. And I go back to this, I'm like, oh, that's more dampened than this. I think they're pretty close to each other, and they're both a more dampened feeling blade than I felt recently on a lot of sticks, including Bauer's, which Bauer I think has kind of gone the wrong way. So CCM has made some solid improvements in terms of puck dampening. And you want to support the channel, and you need a base layer and a protective, kind of supportive base layer that helps protect your growing as well as your hips. Check out the Cortec. This is the Pro 1.0 pant, so this one is not quite as restrictive, and this is kind of tight right here in this X pattern. You might have seen these as Under Armour before, or Bauer for the hockey specific ones. There's also the Core 3.0, which is a lot stiffer, as you can see. Really helps protect my growing and keeping it kind of in place and make sure it doesn't overstretch itself. There's a discount code, and you click the link in the description. Use that discount code to get a discount off, help support myself, as well as get you some pretty awesome base layer pants that really do help with injury prevention and help stabilize your core while playing. So for passing on here and for sauce passing itself, it is a low kick, so I do feel like it is a bit harder to control than a hybrid like the Jet Speed and the LX2 Pro, because sometimes when you do just kind of want to go in there, it just releases so easily, and it kind of helps a little bit too. That passes come off a little bit harder than you really want them to. It's not the end of the world, and it's pretty manageable, and I've been using low kicks and trigger sticks for so long now that it's not really a big issue. But I just do find those really long passes where you're basically going from like your red line to their blue line, you sometimes just lean into it on like even one knee and it just kind of soars a little higher and it kicks a little harder than you expect it to, and it might get up a little bit more, but it's a super minimal thing and it is totally manageable and controllable, and the sticks are good enough and that you can like use them long enough that you get used to it. That's not an issue. For sauce passing, this is the same blade shape CCM's had on for a while, which means, and I've talked about this a lot, the heel is pretty thick on it compared to that new Warrior, Bowers, and that Pro Stock Hockey Sticks ones. It's fine. It works okay. I, again, use so many CCM sticks because they come out all the time that you get used to it really easy, and it's really easy to just throw a sauce pass in there and get it where you want it to and control it. It's not as easy as some other companies, but it's not like a huge detriment. It's just not as good as some other ones are. But you can flip it up there and it's fine. And if you want to do like a longer one, you can do that too and it gets up. It's totally a fine thing. It's just not the best. Now for weight and balance, this, again, I hate doing weights, but companies are advertising specific weights, so you have to talk about them as well. And this is a case where balance is a huge thing. The Trigger 7 Pro, I think, is a phenomenally balanced stick. The weight's kind of down on the blade. I love it to use. It feels really good. This thing feels heavy compared to the 9 Pro. My right hand is my dominant hand. So when I hold these side by side, the fact that the 9 Pro feels lighter than the 7 Pro does means it's going to be a lot lighter. And then when I switch to my dominant hand, the 9 Pro feels so much lighter than what the 7 Pro does. And that 7 Pro, the weight really does feel like it's down here, where this one, it does feel lighter, but the weight does feel like it's coming up a bit, so it is easier to kind of move around and stuff. But this stick does not feel blade light, which is what I've talked about in the past, and what I've talked about for this stick, which is Trigger 8 Pro. So the crazy thing about this, for the Trigger 8 Pro, when you do dominant weak hand, because of the balance point, this stick feels lighter in my hands and the weight feels like it's more up here than down here. So that whole distribution makes this stick feel lighter than what this one is. It is also lighter from the actual scale itself, but the balance on these has, in my opinion, shifted slightly. And with that, the balance on the Trigger 9 Pro feels like it's down on the blade more, where the 8 Pro just felt like it's up more. I thought the 8 Pro was a step back in terms of balance from the 7. I feel like the 9 is a step in the right direction. These are very minute changes though, and it's like a personal preference thing. I just like having that weight lower on the blade. Easier to pull pucks from people with one hand because the stick doesn't want to bounce up as much. Easier to push pucks away from people, and it's easier to fight against people in the corners and stuff like that with a slightly heavier stick, and specifically heavier like balance stick down there. Stick handling might feel a little slower compared to something with a little bit higher balance point, but for me, the 9, just being slightly more blade heavy, feels way better balance, and it feels very, very good. And it's definitely an upgrade over the 8 Pro. And it feels like it's a weight upgrade over the 7 Pro, even though I don't really think it is a weight upgrade, but just the balance on it, and when using it side by side, it does feel like it's a new gen stick compared to the 7, where the 7 is 2 years old now. That's my whole thing about the CCM stuff, where if the 7 was the predecessor to the 9 and there was no 8, these totally feel like different generation sticks. But because that 8's there, it really doesn't feel like the generations are necessary. The 9 Pro definitely feels like a good improvement over the 7 Pro, and if these two were side by side, it's like, yeah, I upgrade it for sure. So for shooting these sticks, we are going to ignore the 7 Pro because it is a generation old now. Yes, it's 2 years, but we are comparing the 9 to the 8 to be a direct comparison. The 8 was a phenomenal shooting stick. I thought it shot very well. It was an upgrade slightly over the 7. I didn't think other things like the balance were the best thing, but shooting it was very easy. It's a traditional trigger low kick, which means it feels like a very low kick. It snaps easy, it takes zero effort to shoot from, and it's solid for that. And when we do, it just goes, and it feels great, and it feels easy, and it like takes zero effort to actually get in there and actually shoot this thing, and which is one of the reasons why I really like triggers. It just doesn't require a lot of perfect technique, and it doesn't require you to really think about it. So if you have a split second like off the wall and you're just pulling and you're going like this, your shot is so much easier to get off a good one than even a hybrid. But this is just easier to get off compared to those sticks because of that low kick. And like I said, this stick felt very good to shoot, and it was very good to shoot, and it continued the trigger's excellentness. When you go to the 9 Pro, it definitely just feels like it's an incremental improvement. It does feel like it shoots better for me, a little bit more kick to it. The releases just as easy, just this one feels like it comes off a little bit harder. Now with that said, I think this kicks more. I'm not sure if they're gonna feel like it kicks more. What I mean by that is because this blade is more dampened, when you shoot this, you don't get that as pingy feedback, and a lot of people contribute that to a harder shot. It's not necessarily the case, but people kind of think about it mentally, and that's just how it works for a lot of people. For me, I shoot this thing, it feels like it snaps more, it feels like it kicks more. That kind of feel in the blade itself doesn't really measure to me as more of a harder kick. I can kind of feel it in the whip and just see how the puck comes off. Some people might think that this one plays a little bit not as good as a kick because that blade's more dampened, but for me, it shot better, it shot easier, it shot like a quicker release, but it was very marginal and it wasn't like a huge generational gap. But you take it and it just goes. There's zero effort into it and it goes where you want to. And that toe piece definitely is stiffer and you can feel it when you shoot it. That one was a toe and that one was also a toe and you can feel it. And when you go in the middle, it definitely doesn't feel as pingy on that shot, but it still releases very easily and it's still a phenomenal shooting stick. This is a stick where this one and the new True 9X4, I believe I have over there, which we'll do a review of soon, are two sticks where I grabbed them and I just started scoring goals I normally don't score. I'm a very defensive defenseman. Goals aren't my priority. One of them, for example, was just above the hash marks. I pulled the puck off the wall and just shot it at the net, and I got short side top corner, but the release is so easy on this thing that it just, and it's there, and it's so easy to do, and it takes no effort, and you can do it really quick, and that is what's very impressive with this stick, and it continues. Now, my thing about these sticks, and this has been my problem with CCM for a while now, there are two small changes every year, and it's like the golf industry. It is so hard to develop a brand new stick that's worth of an upgrade every year, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I love the way Bauer works for this, and Bauer used to do a yearly release. They stepped back and did 2-year release, and I have to give credit to True, and I have to give credit to Warrior, who also do 2-year releases. The jump between an 8 and a 9 for shot performance is such a marginal and incremental change. It doesn't justify going one to the other. I thought the jump from the 7 to the 8 in terms of shot performance wasn't justified either. So that gap between them doesn't really make sense to have one in the middle. This is me running on a broken record at this point because I've said this for a while. The 9 is an excellent stick. It is solid balance, great shooting, puck feels really good. The 8 was an excellent stick. The 7 was an excellent stick. There's too many of them. The 7 to a 9 would be totally worthwhile in jumping up to it, and you would notice a big difference. The 8 to the 9, you're gonna hopefully notice the puck feel difference and the balance difference, shot difference. Honestly, if you did a blind test, you'd probably not notice the shot performance difference on that. And honestly, it's a lot of the whole new factor on the Trigger 9 Pro where a lot of people would think, yes, this one shoots better, but if you blind tested it, you get like 50-50 results, to be honest. This is so frustrating to me for that. These sticks are so expensive now, and they continue to rise up on price, and they just keep releasing them. With that LD new stick CCM's coming out with, which is basically a trigger with a different shaft shape at the top, and they're trying some things. There's no point releasing that like 4 months after the 9 Pro, and then another 4 months will be the 10 Pro, or whatever they call the next trigger after that. It's way too much. This is a solid stick. It's not worth the upgrade, and the 7 Pro is so good. Go find that on clearance, or if you need a new stick, the 9's good, but like if you have an 8, there's no real reason to go to 9 unless you need a brand new one. Companies make too many sticks now. It's not good for the game. I get why they're doing it. It's just frustrating. This is an excellent stick, but it's hard for me to recommend when I know in like 5 months, CCM's gonna have another stick that is gonna top this, and they're gonna have another stick that's gonna top it. So it's like, it sucks. If you want to support this, go for it, but buy the old ones on clearance at this point because the tech upgrades on them aren't worth it from year to year. That's about it for this review. Hopefully it was helpful. If you want to see me review specific content, please reach out to the company on social media like CCM. Say you want to see hockey reviews, review your equipment. Greatly appreciate it on my end so I don't have to buy as many things, so I can review more gear and then put more money into the channel to do other things. Greatly appreciate it on my end, and lets companies know and actually make content that people want to see and listen to. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways, you can check out the links in the description to Just Hockey. Whether you're in Canada or the US, click that link and make a purchase. Gives me a kickback, and you can benefit from the US from that exchange rate. If you want to support the channel without buying anything specifically hockey related, you can check out the links in the description too. Buy me a coffee and Patreon. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more content and doing more reviews. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.